How's it going, guys? It's Cole from See-Through Panel showing off the Cimmerian Volume 3 published by Ablaze, including Iron Shadows in the Moon and the Man-Eaters of Zambula, retailing for $25 US. And before I get too deep into it, I'm not going to spoil any of the plot and things like that. I'll be going over it very lightly. I will be showing off a lot of the art, though, so if you're worried about getting spoiled, I would probably read this first and come back, and then we could talk about it. And before I get too deep into the actual contents of the book, I think I've never gone over the Cimmerian on this channel, and what it is Ablaze doing Conan the Barbarian, obviously, in a more mature style than what Marvel is really doing, and they often pull in very interesting talent, very interesting artists and writers to do these stories a lot differently than you'd see in mainstream comics. So here we've got Iron Shadows in the Moon with Virginie Augustine and Desi Cienti. I'm not sure if I said either of those right. And then Man-Eaters of Zambula is Guess and Desi Cienti, and obviously all adapted from Robert E. Howard. I'm a Conan fan. I've read a lot of the short stories, not all of them by any means, and I've read a lot of the comic adaptations and things, and I'm really a fan of fantasy, like kind of medieval type fantasy, or whatever you call it. And that's why this story really resonates with me, is because I just love fantasy stories, and there's a shocking lack of them in comics, at least that I can find. And I really enjoy the kind of Franco-Belgian tilt that all this art has. I really don't know what to compare Augustine's art style to. I would say like Olivier Vatine, but that also might be because he's in one of the Cimmerian books before this, volume 1 or 2. But really, really incredible layouts and just draftsmanship, I think, on this. One of my favorite depictions of Conan so far out of the Ablaze books. They all have very different depictions of him. Like, as you can see here, this is the second story's depiction of Conan, and then it's a much more painterly there, to tilt it to get into the camera, but we'll see it. Spoiler, I like the first story a lot more than the second story, but they both are good. It's just kind of an art thing for me. I think I prefer the art in the first one. As I said, this is pretty hyper-violent stuff. Obviously, there's also nudity, because there's a lot of that in Conan original stories, but I can show you a guy's head exploding, but I can't show you a nipple or things like that, because YouTube makes sense. So I'll be trying to avoid that stuff, and for that reason, I cannot show you much of the second story, just as a spoiler there. Just love the way he depicts Conan in this. Just an absolute savage when he wants to be, but very cunning. Very capable. Let's skip a few pages here to avoid nudity. Love the use of color here. Let me get back to that color credit. Oh, it's him. It's all Augustine, actually. Only letters in this entire book besides the writer-artists. And they are adapting Howard's work, but still adapting it in a very unique way to comics. This first story is basically Conan and a female companion, which he tends to run into and bring into his stories in every single story, it feels like. On an island, kind of surviving on an island, letting their pursuers pass them, and they uncover this ruin here. Some old temple of a forgotten civilization, perhaps, something like that. They also get a stone thrown at them that is far too heavy for any man to throw. Here you can see Conan's just struggling to even hold it. You can throw it a few feet. So there's multiple facets of like the enemy, the opposition, the antagonist here. There's probably 3 different ones. But these iron mummy kind of things are what are the main antagonist here. And I will say, a slight spoiler, it doesn't really resolve. This is kind of like a story that we don't get full resolution to. I just love the design of these guys. When Conan taps it with his sword, he can tell that they're made completely of metal, of iron or steel. And I just love the way that Augustine draws them. It's almost Hellboy-ish in the skulls. Maybe even just the like cover will show you the like very Mignola-ish skulls there. At least to me. Just a very angular jaw and cheekbones and things. I think I also enjoyed this first story more for its use of color. There's a lot of great color work going on, like the sunset fading into from warm to cool colors as the night kind of comes in and the cold comes in. And the second story does have a good use of colors and kind of like tonally it changes the color scheme. But this has a much softer, more painterly aesthetic to it when these iron mummies are coming into the picture. Very good cartooning originally, but you can tell there's a huge stylistic difference between Conan here. Pretty hard lines. You can tell it's very, very fleshed out, but this is just so much softer and brushier. Mostly because of the color, I think, and the shading. But very much different styles, and I like the contrasting styles that Augustine's using here. This just has like fever dream-like qualities to it as well. I'm going to be going into this story a lot further than I am the second story, just because of A, I like this one more, and B, the second story has a female companion in it who is naked the entire time. In the entire story, she's naked until like the last pages. That's very Mignola looking to me. That could be right out of BPRD, I think. But yeah, so they're trying to dodge the pursuers. They're hiding in this island. Their only sanctuary is kind of ruined by the presence of these really creepy iron mummies that don't really move much, but they kind of appear in the main character's dreams and things and scare everyone. There's great fight sequences. There's really fun world building and exploration. I just love the vistas when they're up on the island like this. Just really, really fantasy feeling. Here's a fight scene for us. It's only one page fight scene, which I don't think you need a fight scene longer than that, especially in adapting something that was a short story. I do love that, another minor spoiler, he takes out this gigantic guy in a really badass way, and then someone slings a rock at his head and it knocks him unconscious and he loses the fight. That was funny to me. Our main character is a badass, but a simple rock can take him down if it's thrown correctly. But I won't say much more about this story other than it's really awesome. I think it really shows off what I really like about Conan, and there's that world building and that history of the area, but it's not essential to the plot, and it's largely like ignored and left hanging at the end in a very mysterious way, but it is also very satisfying, I think, for our character development and where our characters end up going. This is what I meant when I said I could show you horrible graphic stuff, but not any sexual content. Like, here's a guy's head just mangled. Yeah, so that's the reason why my videos are marked as not for children. But yeah, really, really love this story. Really fun end. And as I think I mentioned earlier, maybe not, all of the prose short stories are included in these Ablaze books. You get the entirety of the prose story, front to back, included, which is really cool, especially if you're someone who's willing to actually read prose, not just a comics reader. Either way, it's fine. It's a little bit of a filler. You're only getting really 4 issues probably of comics in terms of length, but you're also getting 2 prose stories out of this hardcover. Not insane production quality on the actual book itself, but the contents I think are really fun. The Man-Eaters of Zambula I'm a little less into. As you can see, the style is very different. If I get nice and close here, you can see the differences. A lot more ink, a lot more finely detailed, I will say. Really fleshing out all the costume designs and the cityscapes and things like that. And I can really only show you the first 3-ish, let me check, 4-ish pages. Even this is cutting it close, but here's Conan's face there. You can see definitely a very different depiction of him. They really throw the sexualization at you in this story, but this one's about Conan basically buying a room and board at a place, and someone tells him don't go there. Out-of-towners that go there never return. And then he runs into... That turns out to be true, obviously, because it's a Conan story, and they try to take him. Here's a stylized depiction in the guy's head of what he thinks is happening, which is not exactly what's happening, but it's really cool creature design, I think. He thinks the guy himself turns into a demon, takes his attendants out to other demons in the desert. And I'm pretty sure this is where I must get one more page. I like this. This is something that the first story doesn't do that I think this does better. It shows Conan as more of a rogue figure. So he's walking through this parade of military people. He sees this sheath right here just kind of hanging off. Smiles while looking at it. And then he's walking down the street brand new sword on his belt right there. So as you can see, the colors are working well here. Like, he's got the pink going for the sunset, very yellowish, sandy tones, but he's also got vibrant colors on clothing up there. Sadly, I just can't show you too much of this one. It's unfortunate, but I could really pick and choose if I wanted to, but I really just wanted to focus on the first story. I like this one a lot, too. It ends very satisfyingly. It's got more of a magical fantasy tone to it, and content, even just straight up magic gets thrown around here, but in a very obscure kind of way that Conan has. No one's throwing fireballs or things like that. No D&D type magic, but they're doing like illusions and things and changing the way people think and stuff like that. And it's really fun. I just think I have to give the edge to... I won't lie. It's not even a contest, really. I give the edge to Iron Shadows in the Moon. Go back to the credits so you can properly see one more time. I just think Augustine's style really resonated with me, of how I like my fantasy, which is bright and vibrant, which is definitely at odds with some Conan stories, I will say. Like, the Man-Eaters of Zambula is not a bright and vibrant story. It is very much a dark, gritty story in a big, dense, populated desert city. So that style here really works and really makes a lot of sense. It's just that the ins and outs of the style, the very like finer points of the style, I think don't work as well for me. And here's Conan cosplaying as a pirate. Yeah, he steps 1 foot on a ship and immediately starts cosplaying as a pirate. But that's all I have to say about this book. I don't think I've talked about the Cimmerian on the channel before, but I just really adore that Ablaze is putting these out. There's 4 hardcovers currently, and I'm going to move on to the 4th one soon after I finish a couple books. I just really enjoy fantasy stories, like high fantasy stories, and this really provides a fun and different kind of aesthetic than a lot of the comic fantasy things that are more Tolkien, elves, and dwarves and things like that, which is good, but this is more of a grounded type darker fantasy, which is definitely a nice breather. So really recommend Ablaze's stuff. A lot of cool Franco-Belgian artists you'll never see in Marvel Conan, and a lot of graphic content you'll never see it in Marvel. They just cannot do it, and I understand why, but Conan in itself is graphic and sexual and all those things. So really appreciate you guys watching. Let me know if you have been reading the Cimmerian or the Marvel Conan, or if you think that's really good, maybe I should read it. Just let me know. Really appreciate you guys watching. Peace.